The mysterious night. It was around 2:30 a.m. and the street was completely deserted. Smoke from a nearby factory was rising and looked hauntingly beautiful under the streetlights. I was walking down the middle of the road when a pitch-black cat with a white dove clutched tightly in its mouth darted past me. My mother's words echoed in my mind. If a black cat crosses your path, something is bound to happen. I decided to follow the path the cat had taken. The road ahead seemed even more deserted than before, and an eerie feeling crept over me. I had always felt a strange fear of such desolate places. Half an hour passed, yet there was no sign of the cat anywhere. Stopping to catch my breath, I looked over to the side of the road and noticed something. Adjusting my glasses for a better look, I realized it was a young child sitting there. I glanced at my watch. It was 3:30 a.m. I felt anxious, wondering what a child could be doing here alone at this hour. He must be lost or in trouble, I thought, and decided to go help him. Approaching him, I asked, "Son, what are you doing here all alone at this time? Can I help you with something?" As soon as the child turned to look at me, I suddenly jolted awake. In the cold of winter, I was drenched in sweat. Taking long breaths, I wiped my face and grabbed the glass of water from the bedside table, drinking it down in one gulp. In the lamp's light, I glanced at the clock. It was exactly 3:30 a.m. Why do I always get such strange, terrifying dreams? I thought to myself, and the dream replayed in my mind. When the child turned to look at me, his face was smeared with blood, and he held that same black cat in his hands, half-eaten. "Uncle, this cat used to bother me a lot," he said and started walking toward me. Thankfully, that's when I woke up. I couldn't sleep again after that, and the rest of the night passed with unsettling thoughts. At 8 in the morning, I left for the office without breakfast, still lost in thoughts of last night's dream. I decided I should consult a psychologist about these recurring nightmares. As soon as I arrived at the office, I tried to keep myself busy by gathering all the files that had been pending for the past week. With a mug of coffee in hand, I was intently reading one of the files when my assistant, Alia, entered the room after knocking. "Sir, here are some more files you requested." "All right, leave them on the table." "I'll take a look," I replied without looking up, flipping through a page. Alia placed the files on the table. "By the way, Alia?" Just as something came to mind, I called her back, but my eyes fell on the child standing next to her, the same child I had seen in my dream the previous night. My words trailed off, and I nearly dropped my coffee mug. I stared at the child in shock, feeling as if he was smiling at me. Before I could say anything, Alia spoke up. "Sir, this is my nephew, Mani. His parents passed away in an accident 2 years ago, so he lives with me." Maybe it was just my imagination, I thought, or perhaps because of my constant thoughts about that dream, this child merely seemed to resemble the one from my dream. Calming myself down, I tried to appear normal. "Sir, you wanted to say something?" Alia asked me. "Woo, who, me? No, nothing." I stammered, completely confused. "You can leave." As soon as Alia left, I loosened my tie and took a few deep breaths. What on earth was happening to me? Why did this child look exactly like the one in my dream? I began talking to myself. Could it be that I was just imagining things? No, I remember clearly. That child in the dream looked exactly like this. The door to my office opened and an employee walked in and, "Sir, it's lunchtime. I've set your meal out for you." "No, I'm not hungry today. Just bring me a cup of coffee," I replied. After that, despite my best efforts, I couldn't focus on any office work, and by the end of the day, I had already had 4 cups of coffee. When I left my office at 5 to head home, I saw that the same child was sitting with Alia. "I won't be coming to the office for a few days. Please send all the files to my flat through Shakir," I said, still glancing at the child as I spoke to Alia. "Oh, Mani, what have you done?" The child had just broken the neck of a toy he was playing with. "Auntie, it was annoying me," he replied, looking straight at me. Swallowing hard, I quickly walked away from there. This can't be a coincidence. This child must have some connection to my dream. Otherwise, the same face and the same phrase. No, this isn't just my imagination. There's definitely something wrong. I thought anxiously as I stepped out of the elevator. Instead of going home, I headed straight to a psychologist and recounted the entire incident in detail. "There's nothing to worry about. Sometimes, excessive work, lack of sleep, or irregular eating can cause such things. And you seem to be going through all of this, the doctor said after listening to me. I'll write you a prescription. Just take these medications and you should be fine. He wrote down the medications, and I returned home, had a good meal, took the medicine, and followed the doctor's advice to sleep early. That night, unlike usual, I fell asleep immediately as soon as I lay down. Otherwise, it usually took me an hour and a half to 2 hours. I was in a deep sleep when I started to hear some noise. I jolted awake from the deep slumber when a loud banging echoed in my ears. Just as I was still in that half-asleep state, the main door of my flat began to pound again. I turned on the lamp and looked at the clock, and a wave of fear coursed through my body as I saw that it was 3:30. Instantly, my dream came rushing back to me. The banging at the door intensified once more. No, this cannot be a coincidence. Something is definitely wrong, I thought to myself. But the doctor had reassured me that this was all due to a routine disturbance. Reassuring myself with the doctor's words, I got up from my place and went to open the door. When I opened the door, I found Alia and that same child, Mani, standing outside. Seeing them at my flat at this hour filled me with astonishment. Mani was holding the same toy that he had broken the neck of earlier that evening in the office, but now it was perfectly fine, with its head attached. Outside, it was raining heavily, with lightning flashing repeatedly and thunder rumbling in the distance. Sir, we have come to you out of desperation. Please help us. We have no one else. Alia began to cry. Okay, come inside. You're already soaked from the rain, I said, inviting them in. I went to get some towels so they wouldn't catch a cold. After handing them the towels, I glanced at Mani, who kept smiling at me, and I felt a strange unease from his grin. I'll get something for you to eat, I said, standing up. Just then, I caught a glimpse of Alia's legs, and the ground seemed to disappear from beneath me. I barely managed to keep myself from falling in terror. Alia's legs were twisted and horrifying, resembling those of a witch. With great difficulty, I managed to control my fear and slipped into the kitchen, locking the door from the inside. I grabbed my phone and dialed the police. On the third ring, my call was answered, and I struggled to calm my racing heart enough to speak. A strange creature has entered my home. With twisted and terrifying legs, I managed to stammer. As soon as I finished, I heard a voice on the line that made my phone slip from my hands, and I fell back in fear onto the bed. It was not the police, but Alia's voice saying, "I am a witch, sir." At that moment, I sensed something right behind me. I turned slowly and saw a bloodied pair of scissors in my hand. Just then, the doctor entered the room. I looked at the witch, and I couldn't believe my eyes because where she had been, there now lay the blood-soaked corpse of a nurse. Doctor, I didn't kill her. It was a witch, not a nurse. She was trying to kill me, I explained to the doctor, but I knew it sounded futile. The doctor called for security personnel, who, thinking I was insane, restrained me, and the doctor quickly administered an injection. As soon as the injection was given, darkness enveloped my vision, and I lost consciousness. When I regained consciousness, I found myself in a different room than before. I was still in a daze. I tried to get up, but I couldn't move. I thought perhaps it was just weakness, but when I focused, I realized that both my hands and feet were tightly bound to the sides of the stretcher. The door to the room opened, and the same doctor entered along with several police officers. The doctor and one officer spoke briefly, and then everyone except the officer left the room. Officer, I didn't kill that nurse. You may think I'm crazy, but she wasn't a nurse. She was a witch who wanted to kill me. She also works in my office. You should arrest a girl named Alia from my office, and everything will be revealed, I said, trying to keep calm while explaining the situation to the officer. Despite my efforts, my anxiety was clearly evident. The officer continued to question me for nearly 2 hours before leaving. I felt a little relieved, thinking that once Alia was arrested, everything would become clear, and I would be free from this mental, psychological, and physical torment. About an hour and a half later, the police officer returned. So how long has Alia been working as your personal assistant at the office? He asked. It's been over 6 months since she started working at my office, and I just told you all the details a moment ago. Why are you asking again? And where is Alia? I asked the police officer in a state of panic. Are you insane? Or are you trying to drive us crazy? The officer yelled at me, his tone much harsher this time. What do you mean? I stammered. I mean, there is no girl named Alia working at your office, and your personal assistant position has been vacant for the past 6 months. Not only that, but according to your office staff, you have been acting very strangely for quite some time. You've been seen talking to yourself in your office, speaking to someone at the assistant's desk daily, and drugs have also been found at both your office and home. I stood there in shock, my mouth agape, as I processed what the officer was saying. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I wondered if this police officer was playing a sick joke on me, or if I was dreaming. But the shock hit me hard when he showed me the CCTV footage where I was standing by Alia's desk, talking to her, but there was no sign of Alia anywhere in the video. For the next several minutes, the officer continued speaking to me, but my mind was completely muddled. I couldn't understand a single word he was saying. Once again, everything before my eyes became blurry, and soon darkness enveloped me. You will be presented in court today, the doctor told me while checking my reports. Mr. Sultan, I have seen similar cases before. I'm giving you sincere advice. Whatever your lawyer asks you in court, you must give him these same responses. The doctor explained how to handle the situation in detail. So you want me to admit in court that I'm insane? I asked the doctor helplessly. You are facing a murder charge. If you don't do this, you could face 20 to 30 years in prison, or you might even be sentenced to death. But if you go this route, the court may send you to a mental asylum, where at least you can live a life that is 1,000 times better than in prison. But doctor, I'm not insane. I see all of this. I have terrifying dreams and I see strange things, I said, crying to the doctor. It's time for you to go to court. A few police officers entered the room. My hands and feet, which were tied to the stretcher, were untied, and I was handcuffed and taken out of the hospital room to a police vehicle. An hour after arriving at the court, my case proceedings began. I answered all the questions according to my lawyer's instructions. For about a month and a half, my case continued, and finally, the court ordered my admission to a mental asylum, considering me a psychological patient. I quickly adapted to the environment here, making the same doctor my personal physician who came to check on me regularly every week. Thanks to his ongoing treatment, I felt much better than before. The terrifying dreams had significantly reduced and my routine improved. I was eating and drinking on time, and I made friends with a few like-minded individuals who were not actually insane, but found themselves in the asylum due to the cruelties of circumstances and the selfishness of others. Time passed, and I didn't realize that 5 years had gone by, with only 2 weeks left for my treatment to conclude. The court had already declared my murder charge as stemming from my insanity and ordered my release upon the completion of my treatment. During these 5 years, I had learned a lot about life, and based on my observations and experiences, I had completed a book aimed at helping people like me avoid such difficulties, which I planned to publish as soon as I was released. If I was alive today, all the credit went to Dr. Jamal, whose encouragement and constant guidance helped me endure this challenging time with patience. You will forget us once you go out, my friend said during a farewell meeting. Today was my day to leave the hospital, and while I was happy to go, I felt sorrow for these friends, as only I could understand their suffering. I had promised myself that as soon as I left the asylum, I would fight for their rights and freedom. After saying goodbye to the entire hospital staff, I made my way to the stairs. As I reached the stairs, I turned around one last time to look back at everyone, unable to control my emotions as tears began to flow. In a hurry, I turned back towards the stairs when I noticed familiar faces outside through the glass. I looked again at the glass. Although I was on the 4th floor, it took me no more than 2 seconds to recognize the faces outside. Suddenly, my expression changed. My face turned red with anger, and my blood began to boil. Outside stood Alia and her nephew, Mani. As soon as I saw them, flashes of the last 5 years of my life, ruined and filled with suffering, began to play in front of my eyes. The accused who had pushed me into a quagmire of agony stood right before me. Unable to control my rage, I immediately ran toward the stairs. The hospital staff, seeing me run like that, began to follow me in alarm. With rage blinding my vision, I sped down the stairs. As I was descending the stairs from the second floor, my foot slipped suddenly, and I fell hard, crashing through the glass at the bottom of the staircase. I stood up unscathed, but down in the foundation of an under-construction building lay a corpse. One rebar had pierced through its eye, another into the skull, and 5 pieces of rebar were embedded in the rest of the body. This body was mine, and my spirit stood by, having gained eternal freedom from life but devoid of humanity. Free from the confines of time and space, my wandering spirit now had only one purpose: destruction. I am now everywhere, all the time. When you read this painful story of my life, I will be present somewhere around you, and I will choke you.